Hello everybody, JGC Anime here, and today we are going to be reviewing Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, or Dungeoni de wo Motemeru no wa Michigatiru Daroka. I probably said that wrong, but let's roll with it. So, funny enough, this is actually the second time I'm reviewing this series, because I actually reviewed it a while back on the channel, like a year or two ago. And while it's not a bad review, I tried to combine the review for both seasons 1 and 2 into the same review. So I figured I'd just review this series because honestly, I want to do it season by season now, since that's how I've been doing reviews for a while. So we're gonna be like restarting from the beginning, where I review season 1, then I review season 2, then season 3, and then currently airing season 4, along with its spin-offs and other stuff. So look forward to that. I'm probably gonna be reviewing all of those, and yeah, let's just hop right into this review. So what is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon? So to go over a quick story summary, the story focuses on the young boy Bel Crenel, who, after being chased around by a minotaur, gets saved by the really strong adventurer Ise Wallenstein, who, after he's saved by her, he ends up falling head over heels in love with her, and thus wants to get strong enough to stand by her, so that way he can eventually confess his feelings and be able to stand by her side. And because of that, he gets this special skill that lets him grow strong really fast, and the whole season focuses on his adventures out in the dungeons that focus around the center of the city of, I think it's called Aurario, and Bel just goes on different adventures, meeting a lot of different people, including his teammates Lily and Welf, who both become prominent characters throughout the course of the season after they're introduced. So yeah, let's just hop into some spoiler-free thoughts I have about the show. Honestly, it still holds up. I remember really enjoying season 1, and I just had such a great time watching it the first 2 times, and as this is the 3rd time I've watched this season, it still holds up really well. Like, it is super fun to watch. I've had such a great time watching, and the scene that I absolutely love still holds up quite a lot. I still feel hyped while watching, and I could talk about that scene in the spoiler section. And just Bel as a character is amazing. His friends Welf and Lily are a lot of fun to watch. While Welf's a bit more fun and Lily's a bit less fun at times, I just still find them fun to watch. I'm a bit mixed on this character called Hestia, because in this world, gods mostly just live on the human plane with the humans, and Hestia is one of those gods. And I'm very mixed on her character, which can also be talked about in the spoiler section, where I don't love or hate her character, but I do have my issues with her. And the side characters are pretty fun. The world is massive, and it gives me a lot to think about. So whenever a new season comes out, I can always just think about what they're going to explore next. And this season does a really good job of exploring a lot of those aspects. And I just have a lot to say that just stands out to it, because the animation, well, for the most part, is really solid. The opening theme is a bit in fact, I feel like that's been one issue with DanMachi, which as I mentioned before, I believe is the name that shortens Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon. I'm just gonna say DanMachi. I think that's one of its biggest issues for me, because I've never really liked their opening theme. Season 3's opening theme is pretty good, but seasons 1 and 2's opening themes, I haven't heard season 4's. Seasons 1 and 2 have both very mediocre anime openings to me, and not because they're cheap looking, but because the songs just sound so generic, and yet the stories themselves that are told within these seasons are so, like, incredible to me, and I just have such a great time watching them. And that the openings always just feel like they take me out of the illusion of fun I was having while watching, and yeah. So anyway, moving past the openings for now, as I mentioned before, I think the animation for the most part is pretty solid. The action scenes are highly entertaining, and I just really like the character development that happens throughout this season, especially to Bel, who grows a lot in this season, and I really like that, because sometimes they'll have main characters that are such blank slates that they won't grow at all. Even if it's only a little bit, they just rarely ever grow. They always stay the same throughout the entirety of the show, but Bel does grow a little bit in this season, and I like that about him. And he's become one of my favorite anime MCs, because in contrast, a lot of anime MCs are either perverts or complete wimps or stone-faced losers, where Bel's kind of like a mix in the middle. He reminds me a lot of the guy who I think his name is Rito from To Love Ru, who, despite his innocent mindset, he's constantly put into slightly awkward positions, although it's not as crazy as Rito's stuff, but And Bell is just a lot of fun to watch for me because his more innocent side, despite the fact in the light novels, which I guess you could say this is a spoiler, but it's not like a mess of what's just the beginning of the book and isn't like shown in the anime, where it shows that Bell originally had like the mindset of having a harem, but after he meets Eyes Wallenstein, or I think it's Eyes Wallenstein, I know it's Eyes, but I'm just gonna say Eyes. After he meets her, he ends up falling in love with her instantly and just kind of like drops the idea of a harem because he just really wants to pursue her, which I thought was a pretty interesting development, and I liked a lot of his growth. And definitely trying to say I like a lot of Bell's growth this season. It was very fun to watch, and yeah. It's really hard to talk about much without spoiling, so we're gonna enter the spoiler section now. Here's a timestamp to when the spoiler section will end. If you have seen this season of DanMachi, I recommend sticking around to hear my thoughts, but if you haven't, you should skip to the end so you can hear my final conclusion, like my concluding thoughts. But, as I mentioned before, if you've seen it, I'd recommend sticking around so you can hear what I have to say. So, yep, we're gonna count down from 5, and if you're still here, then you're in for some spoilers. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so when I refer to one of my favorite scenes, it is the Minotaur versus Bell scene, where after Bell almost dies to a Minotaur in the first episode and is saved by Eyes, later on when Eyes shows up again to defeat another Minotaur, but this time Bell can actually fight, he actually stands up for himself, and Bell's just like, I'm not gonna let Eyes Wallenstein save me anymore! And it's just such an impactful scene to me. Like, it shows his growth as a character. It makes me realize, wow, this is not the same Bell we saw in episode 1. He's actually growing, and he's actually changing, and it's so incredible. I just have such a great time watching that scene. Like, I rewatched it on its own like a dozen times. Like, it's such an amazing scene. It always gives me goosebumps while watching, and I just love it so much. It's such a great scene, and I just can't get enough of it. But yeah, moving past that for now, there are a few things that I'm not too big of a fan of. As I mentioned before, I'm kind of mixed on the character Hestia. Hestia, while I didn't hate her for a lot of this season, there are moments that I really hate from her, such as her literally trying to block other girls from getting close to Bell. Like, I remember in, I think it was episode either 11 or 12, when Eyes is talking with Bell, because they've gotten to know each other throughout this season, and says, hey, you want to go hang out in the town tomorrow? And Bell's just like, yes, let's do that, because he wants to hang out with his crush. However, while they're doing that, while they're just talking, Hestia suddenly comes up because she apparently is in love with Bell, and she's just like, oh, Bell, you weren't thinking of not inviting your goddess, are you? Because gods create familias, and Bell's the only member of her familia, and she's in love with him, and as I mentioned before, and it's just so frustrating because every time there could be a romantic development with any other person, Hestia always shows up to try to block that from happening, and it irritates me, because especially with the Eyes scenes, because I really like Bell and Eyes when they interact with one another. When they were just training earlier in the season, I loved it. I had such a great time seeing the two of them interact with each other and how they got to learn about each other's strengths and weaknesses, even though it was mostly just Bell's weaknesses. And I just really loved their time together. So hearing Hestia just come in there, just seeing it, and her just trying to block them from interacting with each other irritates me to no end. The fact that she just never lets Bell hang out with other women, even though it really doesn't. I get that's a form of jealousy, but it kind of irks me. Other than that, she's a fine character. I don't think she's terrible. I don't think she's horrible. But those moments in particular make me hate her. Like, I know a lot of people use the term Hestia is Bestia, but I personally, not a big fan of her. I think she's fine, but she's not the best girl of the series. To me, even though I know it sounds really dumb, I personally really like Eyes. I think she's probably one of the most fun characters, and I'm definitely rooting for her and Bell's romantic relationship to actually evolve and happen, because I really want to see it. So, yeah. Other than that, there's a few other things I'm a bit more mixed on, such as the harem aspect in general. Like, after Bell finally gives up on having a harem, girls start flocking to him. Like, almost every girl in his life is suddenly flocking towards him, and it's just so funny because even though he's only been in, like, Orario, I think that's the town, I'm pretty sure that's the town's name, for like, or I don't know, or a city, he's suddenly introduced to, like, a dozen girls where like 4 out of the 6 or so of them, I say a dozen, then I say 6, I don't know, but basically almost like half the girls are already swooning for him, and I don't mind it, but I'm a little like, why is there a harem when we're meant to be rooting for Belle to get with Eyes? It's this hilarious but kind of weird situation where I'm for it because I don't hate harem animes. I'm not against them. I actually can sometimes get really into them. Not always. Like sometimes they can suck really bad, but there are occasions where there's the occasionally like really enjoyable harem show, and this is probably one of those because even though I'm not a big fan of the harem element in general, I'm fine with it being there. I'm not bothered by it. And overall, it's just there. I'm still rooting for Eyes and Belle even to this day, and I'm perfectly content with saying that because I enjoy their relationship. Even if right now it's just platonic right now, I'm still rooting for them because they honestly seem like such a good duo in a lot of different aspects whenever they're on screen with one another. And yeah, there are a few storylines that I'm not like too big of a fan of either, because there's the character Lily. I'm not a huge fan of her either, any more than Hestia. I don't mind her, but she's just kind of there. She's not horrible, she's not great, she's just there. And her storyline where her whole life was ruined by adventurers was like, out of all the storylines, hers was probably the least interesting of the bunch, and I found myself kind of bored while watching those few episodes. They weren't like the worst thing I'd ever seen, and there were times where there was a smile on my face while I was watching, but overall, I found her storyline to be the most mediocre of the bunch. Other than that, I also have to say I wasn't too sure about the finale. Like, I enjoyed the finale, but at the same time, I didn't, because it felt like such a random tag-along to the story where after Belle and crew go down to the 18th floor in the dungeon where there's like the safe haven, Hestia ends up coming to the dungeon even though gods aren't meant to, and accidentally uses her divine power to save Belle from a situation, thus angering the dungeon, having them send down a giant floor boss, which they spend the next episode after that, which is the final episode, to defeat it. And while the scene itself was really cool, like I really enjoyed seeing all the adventurers in the safe zone gather together to fight the monster, at the same time I felt a little underwhelmed by everything. Like everything felt so weird, and I can't say whether I liked it or didn't like it. It's just this weird sense where I enjoyed it, and that's happened on multiple occasions for me when watching this show, where I feel like I should be hating or liking this, but I'm just kind of in the middle where I'm just enjoying it. And that's kind of like how I describe DanMachi in general. I have a great time watching it, that's all. I'm not loving the story and its compelling way of going about things. I'm just enjoying the story because it's just fun to watch. And that's how I view it. So, yeah. We're at the conclusion of this video, and what are my final thoughts? I like it. I don't think it's some big, majestic story that deserves to be told throughout the entirety of time. And while I'm not a big fan of its light novel series, I do find myself enjoying the anime quite a bit, and I've just been having a great time with it. That's why I have to give DanMachi Season 1 an 8 out of 10. I had a great time watching it personally. While there were times where I felt awkward while watching, I still enjoyed it, and that's why I'd recommend it to people who just like a fun fantasy story about a guy who, despite the title, doesn't actually try to pick up girls in a dungeon. At least not for a while, but that's for another time. And yeah, so that's all I really have to say. Thank you all for watching. If you're new to the JGC Anime channel, don't forget to subscribe. I always welcome new anime fans to the channel, and I will see you all around. Peace!